1945 is when Grand Rapids, Michigan, first added sodium fluoride to the water supply. And what's sad is they were supposed to do a 15-year study and look at this very carefully to see, does fluoride added to the water actually help reduce decay in children? And after just 5 years of trying to study it, they said, we've got enough evidence, let's just do this. But the truth is they really didn't have the evidence. They didn't do their true due diligence and use a true scientific method in their process. And so, once this started rolling, then every city started adding it on. And, it's important to actually note that 95% of the world doesn't fluoridate, only 5%. And of the 5%, which is about 11 countries, our country provides fluoridated water to more citizens than the rest of the world combined.
What are the ways you can get it out of the water?
So first and foremost, like you mentioned, if you can get, some kind of maybe spring water or some kind of water that has nutrients. So we don't want to drink like reverse osmosis water or distilled, because you've lost all the important nutrients that your body does need in water. But if you're unfortunately in a place that has fluoridation, which is most of the country, you can look into some water filters. Other than that, you just got to try to avoid as many sources as you can. I mean, obviously, I would recommend not buying any toothpaste that has fluoride. Please know that many juices and drinks and sodas are made with fluoridated water, so you got to avoid those. It's more difficult than people realize, to be honest.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. With regards to toothpaste, let's talk about that briefly. Is there a difference between the amount of fluoride exposure you're going to get by taking a fluoride supplement, for example, or drinking fluoridated water as compared to if you brush your teeth with fluoride and then rinse and spit?
Yeah, very good question, Dr. Paul. When you brush with it, that's topical application. And that's the one argument that maybe mainstream dentistry could make, that if you topically apply fluoride, you might get somewhat of an anti-carcinogenic, antibacterial effect. But if you're not swallowing it, then you're really not getting any kind of systemic exposure. Now, obviously, with young children, you have to be careful and make sure that they don't swallow, or as I mentioned earlier, don't buy any fluoridated toothpaste at all. So yes, drinking it is the argument, and that's why water fluoridation should not be around, especially after all the scientific evidence that we have now, with all the systemic disturbances it causes. There's really no reason at all to have it in our water supply. So brushing with it topically, every other ingestion, food, drinks, water, it has a systemic effect, which we don't want.
So before we leave topical, a lot of dentists will actually do a fluoride application that's supposed to be, I think it's way more concentrated, right?
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be very good at preventing cavities. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's very toxic. So any kind of fluoride varnish, which is what you're referring to, it is unnecessary. There are other options. Iodine, just swishing with iodine is much more effective than applying a fluoride varnish. Anybody has access to ozone therapy. Ozone gas and ozonated water can actually do a much better job as well. So bottom line though, diet. If we're eating a diet, as we've already mentioned a couple times here, where we try to avoid things that contain fluoride, that's the ultimate way to do it.
Okay, excellent. One more point before we leave the how we're getting exposed to fluoride issue. I understand there are schools that are actually giving fluoride tablets to the students. Is that your understanding?
Yes, there are some that are still doing that, and that should be absolutely banned. Most people that are listening right now probably don't realize that fluoride supplements have never been approved by the FDA. So it's truly, if you look at this from a legal standpoint, it should be illegal for a dentist or anybody to prescribe fluoride supplements and for the pharmacy to actually fill that prescription. They've never been approved by the FDA.
You've been following this literature, and I know the National Toxicology Program, NTP, released this 1,000+ page systematic review, and I think they concluded 64 out of 72 studies showed a link between fluoride and lowered IQ. What are some of the other problems with ingesting fluoride systemically? So drinking it, eating it, swallowing it.
It's linked to a lot of issues in our body. First and foremost, it affects the thyroid. It'll beat iodine to the thyroid all day long. So people who ingest a lot of fluoride might have lower thyroid issues. It affects the pineal gland, which is where we produce melatonin, and it controls our sleep and all that. it'll actually calcify your pineal gland over time. It affects the kidneys where we filter it. So, that's just 3 organs that I've named. It also affects every enzyme system in the body. So all of our bodily processes require enzyme activity, and fluoride affects all of those. So, there's so many things that it does that are negative for this one positive effect, which it has proven not to do. When you drink fluoride, you don't get the anti-decay effect that pro-fluoridationists claim we do. And that's been proven even back in the year 2000 in the Journal of the American Dental Association, our trade journal.
Other than this supposed benefit to reducing cavities, which it probably doesn't really do, does it have any other benefits to add fluoride to our body?
None at all. And in fact, it's not an essential nutrient at all. There is no bodily process that requires fluoride to happen. This is the one medicine, Paul, that is added to our water supply without any informed consent. When you add chlorine or other things like that to the water, that is to make the water palatable so we can drink it, potable. Adding fluoride is adding medicine. And again, it's dose and dosage, right? I mean, there's a certain dose that they might put into the water supply, but how much we ingest is the dosage. And so you can't control that. So some people can get much more fluoride in their water supply than, say, somebody who drinks just a little bit each day. So it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So you bring up a very good point. Toxins are dose dependent. Mm-hmm. When you have a chronic low level exposure, which drinking water, we all do this every day, and we're encouraged to drink more generally, you're going to have this constant exposure. And help me out with the science on this, but I believe the EPA set this limit, like you shouldn't exceed 0.7 milligrams per liter. But the studies are showing if you get over 1.5, you're going to have lowered IQ and neurotoxicity. Drink twice as much water and you're poisoning your brain.
That's exactly right. And just to be clear too, there's at least 11 studies of those 64 that showed IQ effects at the level that's in drinking water, 0.7 parts per million. So it's not just the 1.5, but that is, if the EPA is doing its job, they're supposed to regulate that and protect us from levels that are even close, anywhere near what is the effect that can cause issues like IQ problems or any kind of cognitive effects. So to me, this is a no-brainer as far as if I'm the judge ruling. There's been more than enough proof to show that water fluoridation is harmful to our children's brains.
Yeah. I think on this margin of safety that the EPA has used for other toxins, generally it's like 20 times or more. They should be allowing like not 0.7, but 0.07 or 0.007. They are allowing a massive dose.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. This is the first time that they've ever said, we're going to go to the actual level that we have in the water. So unless we can prove on all the studies that at 0.7 parts per million, there's harm done, I think we're okay. And that's just not how they've ever handled it with any other substance in the past.
Why is the EPA continuing to support fluoride? What's behind all this? It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. I'm going to say that we have a very big waste problem issue. This is probably something that people don't touch on. It's very important to know that the fluoride that is added to our water supply is not naturally occurring calcium fluoride. It's not even sodium fluoride that you might find in toothpaste. It is a waste product from the fertilizer industry called hydrofluorosilicic acid. More simply saying a silicofluoride, which again has never been approved by the FDA. So when fertilizer industry is making their fertilizer, and aluminum companies as well, this HSA, this hydrofluorosilicic acid, is a byproduct that is so harmful, Paul, that the EPA does not allow it to be placed in our landfills, and it can't be vaporized in the air. So they require them to install these scrubbing stacks to catch it. But now we're still dealing with a waste issue. What do they do with the captured hydrofluorosilicic acid? Well, they put it in big tankers and they ship it to cities and they put it in our water supply.
That's about as insane as it gets. I hope you understand now why it's so important to make sure you're not getting fluoride in your water. If you have fluoride water, filter it out for sure, and protect your kids' brains, their thyroid, their pineal gland. There are so many negative health effects.